important. So it says, hey, let's freeze up.
Right, exactly. Still some parts of 2020 happening.
I know, but thanks. The second link that you just sent me worked a lot better.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Well, I guess we can go ahead and get started. Did you want to say something, Kate? You turned the camera on,
No,
so.
I was just going to say, hi, Shawn.
Hey,
Welcome. Thanks
Kate.
for joining us.
Yeah. So awesome. We have quite a big turnout of volunteers. So we'll go ahead and get started. Everybody, this is Shawn Brown. He is the director of Chatham County DFCS. And he's here to kind of talk to us about DFCS, kind of what's going on, just some updates too. So we have a mixture of brand new CASAs and also existing CASAs. So Shawn, do you want to kind of take it away and kind of just give us an overview of what DFCS is, what y'all do, and some things y'all are working on?
And Mandy, as he speaks, I just want everybody to know there is the question and answer. So if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A or in the chat box. And Mandy and I will be sure to watch those and ask him at the end of his presentation.
Awesome. So welcome everybody to the existing CASA folks. Thanks for being a member of CASA. Love you guys. One of your biggest fans. You all know that. Thank you so much for what you've done already, the families you're serving, and the tremendous support that you all provided during Christmas. To the new members of CASA, welcome to the family. Welcome to the team. You are a part of one of the most amazing organizations that I've ever been able to partner with, and I mean that wholeheartedly.
And we're not paying him to say that, so.
That's actually true. That is a true statement. I'm not getting paid. I am not a paid spokesperson.
That's right.
But I am a tremendous fan. And that's because of a number of things. One is I believe children need that neutral third-party voice to be able to advocate for them. That's not a paid professional. That's not a part of a system that is there for them. It is so amazing to me over my 22 years of doing this work, how many times children will tell people who choose to be involved in their life that they know don't have to be there, something that they wouldn't tell anybody else. It's amazing how it makes a difference. And also, I think the organization is so critical because you guys can play such a supplemental role. A number of our staff members right now are carrying caseloads of between 30 and 40, which is almost double the national recommended average, which is not good. That is because we have had vacancies throughout the year that we have not been able to fill, nor have a lot of other state agencies due to the budget constraints that have happened with COVID. And just in the past 2 months, we've really been able to start hiring, which has been very exciting. We've just brought on 6 case managers for foster care. I know, very exciting. Today, a supervisor vacancy that had been open for about a year was filled. So we're very excited about that. And I'm in the process of selecting 3 more case managers and may get a couple next round. So we're about to rapidly grow our workforce, and having 11 case managers with about 425 kids into care, let me tell you, it's complicated. So part of where you all come in is being able to, again, be that voice, that's that neutral third party for our kids, which I think is absolutely critical. I mean, many times there are things that you all can say on the stand for the child that we would never want a child to have to get on a stand and testify to. I mean, it'd probably be traumatic and detrimental if they had to say some of the things that you all can say. And so, you spare them of that. And then there are times that there are things that our policies, we have to follow our policies, they limit us from. So that you don't have the same constraints. So whereas we might not disagree that something is in a child's best interest, by our policy, we might not be able to recommend it but that doesn't stop you great folks from being able to say, you know what, I really think that this is in the department's best, in the children's best interest. And then we as a department can say, well, yeah, by policy, we can't, we can't, we can't suggest it or recommend it, but we're not in opposition for it. And sometimes that's exactly what's needed to be able to do some really great things, but for our kids. But the way I see that is that's really just each party being involved, knowing what their roles are, and knowing that if I can go this far, but our agency can't go any farther, then what can CASA do? And if CASA can do this part, but they can't go any farther, then what can DFCS do? Or what can another entity do? And then just being that safety net for one another. Y'all play an awesome role in being able to supplement, helping to get medical records, doctor records, school records, all kinds of different things. That it's funny, but still, even to this day, so many times we'll ask for the same medical records that you ask for, but y'all get them faster than we do. I guess they like you more or something, but you do. And that's been an amazing. And then your volunteer support of our staff during COVID-19 has just been incredible. You guys have done stuff to help encourage our staff. Some of the well-being things that you guys have done, supported us during Christmas with our Christmas toy giveaway. What that did is that provided those tangible supports to our case managers that otherwise would have had to pull off the mission that nobody else can do to do that administrative type work, but you all stepped in and you took care of that. And that relieved a lot of stress from our team. I love that you all are a part of right here in the building, even though we're not allowed to hang out like we used to. But we had a great method where that meant that you were one floor away and you could go down and like stalk a case manager. Oh, I'm being recorded. I'm probably not supposed to say stalk. Lovingly and persistently pursue our case managers and say, look, you need to give me information. I know we can't do that today, but please continue to be persistent. Even when my case managers say they got it, some of them are just, they have a lot of pride in the work that they do, and they just need to go ahead and say yes to the help that you're offering. So you can go ahead and say, but your director said that I was supposed to help you, and that's what he expects, and then be able to do it. And then sometimes, unfortunately, again, being that those eyes and ears, sometimes you become aware of a problem in a situation that I need to know about. And if I don't know that there's an issue out there, then I can't do anything about it. And that can be really important. So as an agency, a lot of people think that we're a bunch of different things, but what we are is on the Office of Financial Independence side, we call that OFI. That's really our first arm of prevention and service to children and families, where we provide food stamps, Medicaid, to the blind and disabled, pregnancy Medicaid. Food stamps is really called SNAPs now. And so that's really our first opportunity to try to intervene to help families, to empower them, to hopefully prevent them from being on the social services side. So that's the first part of what we do. And the second part of what we do is we are tasked with investigating and assessing the safety of every child that's reported to us. Now, some folks don't know this, but there is different criteria when a person makes a report that has to have an allegation of an actual maltreatment. We have to have a alleged maltreater. Just because a person is a terrible parent doesn't necessarily mean that they have abused or neglected their children. And that surprises a lot of folks, but it has to rise to a level of abuse or neglect. And so if there isn't something that's clear to that, then we'll get what's called a screen out. We'll receive a notification, but we don't go out and investigate or assess that. And that doesn't mean that we as an agency don't care. And I need y'all to know that, because what it means is we just didn't have enough information today. And that doesn't mean that tomorrow or 2 hours from now, somebody might not have more information that could provide that, which would be exactly what we need. It just means that. Then,
Sorry,
yes,
can I interrupt you? One question, just because you mentioned it. What is the meaning? What does OFI stand for?
that is Office of Financial Independence, OFI.
Thank you.
So I said that first. Yeah, there's a lot of acronyms. You'll speak a whole new language by the time you get done with this. You'll speak a blend of DFCS, court, and CASA, and probably some therapy, twinge of therapy in there too.
That's right.
Or some wine, who knows?
Right. So when we go out and investigate and assess a child's safety, there's two tracks that it can take. If there's clear that there is the belief or we have seen that there is a safety threat, then that's going to be an investigation. We have 45 days to assess that safety and make a determination. If it doesn't rise to that level, then we have a family support level, which allows us 60 days to assess the family and make a bunch of referrals or different things to try to support the family so that they do not have an investigation later on or their children abused or neglected. When we determine that a child is unsafe, our first measure is to try to work with the family and with other relatives or caregivers to put in a safety plan to be able to ensure the child's safety in the home. We don't take parental promises because that's like asking somebody who just raided your refrigerator and ate the cake that you didn't want messed up to say, hey, don't eat the cake again. And so you can't ask people that just did something to be the ones that promises all by themselves not to do it. So we have to have other people who are part of that, who verify that the caregivers are following that. If there is no safety plan that we can put in place that ensures the child's safety, then the next thing we have to do is we convene a team, if it's during Monday through Friday business hours, that have, it's called a pre-team, and it involves a number of our state office personnel, the Office of Child Advocacy, OCA, and many other partners, in which we basically have to lay out, our case and what our diligent efforts have been. That's been very good for us. We have actually done really, really well with that pilot program, and that has made our case going before the judge when we do need to remove even stronger, because we're very clear about what we did to try to prevent it. At that point, when children come into care, our first option that we try to look at is placing the child with a family member for kinship care or a fictive kin. And we do that because it is usually least traumatic if for even a child to be in foster care technically, but to be in a family member or a relative or a fictive kin's home than in a foster home. But if that can't happen, then yes, we do look for foster homes. We try to keep children as close to Chatham County as we can, but with many times large sibling groups of 4, 5, 6 plus, and other issues, we're just not able to. So then our next thing is to try to keep all siblings together and to place them together. And sometimes that means they end up placed across the state. And we really work then at that point to strengthen the family to have the kids to be able to return. Many times we do this with either aftercare, where we've returned the children home. We're not saying everything's at perfect, but what we're saying is that we've now mitigated the safety threat to where we can at least work with the family in the home. And we're definitely doing that. So where we're at right now is we're going to continue to telework through the end of the fiscal year for this year. So that means we're going to telework until June 2021. I don't know what's going to happen with us after that. So a lot of people have erroneously said, oh, DFCS is closed. No, no, we're not. I can assure you. It
The
just,
building is closed, but y'all are still working for sure.
well, right. The building is not even actually closed. It's closed to the public.
Wow.
But yeah,
Right.
if somebody needed to come in for a very specific reason, we schedule that appointment. They come in, they handle that business, and they go out. And that this has actually helped us really protect everybody, because you've got CASA in our building, we've got Homeless Authority in our building, we've got a few other state entities in here, we've got Department of Aging in here, and so it's really just an effort not to restrict people, but to try to keep everybody healthy and safe.
Right. Exactly.
So
Since
I
you were
don't know.
Since you're talking about COVID, what kind of changes have you seen, like in regards to child welfare, since all this started, and kind of how are your case managers responding to it as well?
Oh, that's a great question. So on, I guess we'll call it the concerning side, yes, we've seen a decrease in the number of children that have the number of reports that we've had um, since COVID have started. That was especially alarming during the shutdowns and the stay-at-home orders. Since those have lifted, we've definitely seen an increase of reports. A lot of them are generated, as a result of school type activities and things. So that has increased. We have seen an increase of children coming into care, but to put it into perspective, the number of children that have still come into care, even in the last 6 months in compared to a year ago, has been lower, which is a good thing. I don't think that that's an indicator that means that there's that many more kids out there that should be in foster care that aren't. What that really is more of an indicator of is we're working better on the front end with the families that we are receiving on trying to prevent it and really making sure that only the kids that absolutely need to be in care are in care. So that's a really important thing. Our team, we go out and assess safety and have in-person contacts. One, when we believe or we know that a child is not in a safe situation, and only after asking the COVID questions first and foremost, and then, like everything, wearing our masks. So it's allowed us to really to evolve. A lot of people, if you'd have asked them a year and a half ago, could we do the things that we're doing now to ensure the safety of children? And they would have said, no, absolutely not. You can't do that.
Right.
And surprisingly, we've done it. And not only have we done it, we've done it really well. And so that's allowed us to change some of the platforms of how we interact. We're using a lot of social media interaction platforms, a number of them. More people have them than not, which really then has taken us in some cases where we might have only had contact with a family or a child one time per month. Now we're actually having contact with them 3, 4, 5 times a month because we're interacting on a different platform. So that's surprised a lot of people. And we've had to adapt and evolve like a lot of folks have with telemedicines and different things. I mean, there are some things that just don't work unless you're in person, but there's a lot of things that we have learned that by improving the quality of our questions and our engagement, that surprisingly, we've actually been able to do some really good work to the point that I believe that even as we come out of this COVID situation, there's going to be a level of teleworking that our staff is going to still be allowed to do, which means that they'll be able to work from home some and be in the office some. That's going to be good for them. It'll also be good for us to maintaining our office environment. And I believe that there's going to be a level of virtual contacts, just like we're doing tonight, that allow all of us to get together from different places, where if we all would have had to have gotten together in person, at least Mandy would have fed us and Kate would have fed us really well.
We would have given you food, but
but a lot of times we've actually surprisingly found that a lot of meetings have been better held virtually because people aren't having to travel to get to them. And that's actually been surprising in our platform of engagement.
Awesome. Yeah.
So right now, a couple things you want to know is the work that we're actually doing right now. Encourage our case managers. Number one, always do your best work. But number two is don't forget that the work that we're doing right now is going to be the work that when our next Child and Services Family Review is conducted, we call that CFSR in a couple of months. The work that they're doing today is the work that's going to be reviewed. So that's a great thing to remind them of in this. So I think we've got 2 questions, Kate. Is that right?
Oh, I think we answered them, but I do have one question, kind of just to give our volunteers an idea of what like a day looks like for a DFCS worker, kind of what their caseload looks like. Because with like 30 to 40 cases, I mean, that can be pretty overwhelming. So what kind of is entailed in that role of a case manager?
Okay.
It's
So
a
yeah,
hard question, I know.
it is. It's no day is ever the same, I can assure you.
Exactly.
So the average work day hypothetically starts with an 8:30 cadence in the morning where we have different topics every day to discuss critical points of our work. What are we doing? What's been done? Where are we at with this particular piece of the work? It's kind of where we formulate our game plan for the day. And then our folks are off from there. Usually by 9 o'clock, by 9 o'clock, case managers are either starting to get into court, they're getting into panels, or they're already moving into virtual contacts with parents and kids, following up on services, attending various trainings and different meetings throughout the day. One thing as an agency, I don't know if I'm proud of or what I am. I'm a bit conflicted, and that is why we have saved a lot of time on the road. We've gotten way too good at this point of doing virtual meetings, and so now they're stacked back to back. And you can unfortunately find yourself where, not by your own doing, but because other people said you had to be in meetings, where you're actually hitting two of them at a time. And so they've got administrative tasks that they're spending out. So each day they're looking at, okay, how many contacts do I need to be making per month? And how many kids do I need to contact? I need to divide that up, and I need to divide that out through my week. How many parents, case plans? I need to have time to be able to work on my admin work, my case plans. And then we have work that we, do in entering our documentation. So, I mean, those can all be things in the day of the life, staffings. And then if it's a really exciting day, then at 4 o'clock, they go on call once a week and they take any new reports of abuse and neglect that come in between 4 o'clock and 8 a.m. the next morning.
Yeah.
And so no 2 days are the same. Yesterday was quite an awesome day. Started at about 6:30 on the dot with a phone call from an FBI agent that I know. And they were working in conjunction with Pooler PD, had just recovered a child out of Minnesota who was on the missing list, who came to Georgia and ran from the grandparents and had just been recovered. And so that was an amazing endeavor that took both my investigations team and foster care team and our caregiver recruitment and retention team, which is CREW. They are the ones that look for foster home placement, about 4 hours. And within an amazing short time, it was awesome. We were able to confirm that Minnesota took the child into care. We were able to have the child removed from that situation and able to get that child into a foster home and confirm that the child is alive and well and recovered, and we'll be able to send that child back to Minnesota in the next couple of days.
Awesome. That's great news.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
And it looks like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Do you
we
want
have a couple questions. So first is, could you describe what the ideal relationship of a CASA with a case manager would be? And what are the issues that you think prevent us from reaching that ideal?
I mean, I think an ideal is one where we value the partnership that each entity brings to the table and understands that we have similar but also different roles. I don't think we allow the different roles to be a hindrance and a barrier, but we actually use them to our advantages. There are things that the case manager can do that a CASA can't do because they're not the case manager. Vice versa, there's things that a CASA can do that a case manager can't and shouldn't do. And we need to use those both of those roles to the benefits of our children. So, I think also, you guys can be a great asset in being a confirmation piece to what we think we know or we know, but being able to confirm what you're getting told, what you're seeing. And sometimes we need you to be the ones that say, no, that's not what we're being told. Sometimes you'll get told things that we're not, and sometimes you'll have to be careful too. Sometimes they'll tell you one thing for whatever reason, and they'll tell us something different. So when those things happen and we have differences of opinion, I think it's really important, one, to remember that we come from different roles. And then some of us come from different backgrounds. Some of you have different types of educations, which may help you, or life experiences that help you see things one way. And then our staff have different educations and then training that help us see things a different way. And I think, again, it's what would prevent us is to become in like a competing priorities of how different people see things. I don't think that that would be helpful, but I think rather it's about embracing the fact that there are some similarities and some differences, but really letting those be of how then do we use that to help our families. You're on mute, Kate.
Yeah, I got it. I think what we're hearing too is that, I think sometimes in the courtroom, it can be, there can be conflict in the courtroom that can sometimes emotionally like stop relationships from developing, and we have to kind of acknowledge that elephant in the room, right? Like if we as CASAs sometimes have to call out any shortcomings a case manager might have had or things of that nature, that can be difficult. But what I'm hearing our volunteers say, and we hear this often with our volunteers, is that they feel like they're offering themselves to the case managers, but the case managers aren't necessarily taking advantage of them, using them more, right? To get those medical records, to do those things that really probably are preventing the case managers from doing those explicit things that only a case manager can do, right? Like get the child ready for adoption and push them that way. We can't do that for them, but a case manager can. Could you maybe give some suggestions? I heard you earlier say the director said to let you do it. Are there some other suggestions that you might give on ways we can get them to engage with us more?
Yeah, one is yes, don't be afraid to say, but your director said. Do we need to talk with him? Because you got to remember, a lot of us in the helping profession are absolutely horrible accepting help. That's just the truth. And that's not a weakness, it just is. And so sometimes that is, and so that's one thing. If it's a persistent problem, I mean, one of the things is, maybe just don't assume that the reason you're getting resistance is because somebody doesn't like you, doesn't value you, especially right now. Some of it is at 35 to 40 cases, people are doing all they can to stay afloat. And it's hard to even take sometimes, and I know it's the wrong thing, but it's hard to say, well, I don't have 30 minutes to get you the information that you need, which could save me 3 hours worth of work. And that's not exactly the right answer to that. But certainly, sometimes as an agency, we make mistakes and you have to call that out. And that's just life, and that's accountability, and that stinks. I think just culture is asking why. Is that really because somebody doesn't care? Is that really because somebody was just unprofessional? Is it because somebody didn't know better and maybe it is a training issue? Or maybe it is that somebody is trying to stay afloat, and yes, they should have, and we as an agency should have done a better job. but under the circumstances, we have not been able to do it. It's not an excuse, it is an answer. But then the question is what can we do to move forward from there?
I wonder if Mandy or Sharon, as former case managers, would
Oh,
have
heavens,
anything
yes.
to add to that. They're awful quiet. I'm calling on y'all. Do you have anything that you might add as former case managers who's been in the role of working with CASAs? Was there anything that would cause you to be more responsive to a CASA, and would make you, respond to them a little quicker or acknowledge what they could offer?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the big issues is, like Shawn stated, there are a lot of new case managers and they don't necessarily understand like the role of CASA and like what we offer and how we can help them. So I mean, I think just educating them to let them know like what we can do to help and build that relationship together. But I mean, I get it too, because I was in those shoes too. I had upwards of 40 cases when I worked at DFCS. So I feel the pain. I really do, because you're just trying to, like Shawn said, stay above water. Like you're just treading and yeah, just trying to do what you can to get it done. And it's kind of, I don't know.
I would say that when it was, we were in the building, it made it a little easier for us to maybe come downstairs and say, hey, introducing the CASA to the defects worker and trying to form that relationship. I know when I was there, I mean, I had great relationships too. I didn't really know the CASAs until court, because I never had that, face to face. But it, I think it's just forming those relationships too, and kind of letting them know that, hey, I'm there to help. What can I do to help you? And sometimes I do think that we don't get the response when we're sending out emails or making phone calls to the workers, to DFACs. We're not getting any responses. So and I think that's one of the barriers. We're asking how can we help, but we're not getting that feedback from them.
Right. So Sharon, what I hear from you is that when you were a case manager, really relationship really helped you establish that trust with CASAs. And I've heard you even talk about CASAs that you worked with that stood out to you when you were a case manager, right? So, I mean, because we could talk all day long about case managers having too much to do, but as CASAs, we only have control over what we do. We don't necessarily have control over what they do. And so to our CASA volunteers, what I'm hearing from you is one thing they could do is establish relationships. I think we have a couple CASAs that like take cookies to their case managers every time they visit with them.
Oh, and let me tell you, there's some of you who have found some creative ways to connect, and it's worked out very well. I do agree that when we were able to make those contacts with people in the building, it was a lot easier. Certainly, for people that have already had relationship, it's a lot easier to maintain them virtually. It's much more challenging to start new relationships, starting them virtually, unless you're in a series of different meetings and things together. So to that end, Kate and Mandy, I would say, one, let's get you guys on the agenda for either the February 1st or maybe the March 1st all staff meeting for social services, to have you guys come on and talk about.
It'd be great timing with all the new case managers.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And then maybe we could set up some voluntary social mixers between our staffs virtually. Maybe we could do some lunch hour mixers or something to make it fun. We could come up with things and try to get some of the CASA volunteers to come on, try to get some of our staff to come on. Maybe we can do some sort of discussions, virtual game, or just something
we can do that
creative to get people seeing each other and interacting with each other. And if anybody else is much smarter and talented, by all means, come up to.
I think that's a great idea. And especially and then I think that would be, I mean, we always, whenever we're trying to get case managers to respond in those ways, we'll offer gift cards here and there to, add that, because as we know that their inboxes are much fuller than a lot of ours. so we can work on finding interesting, creative, proactive ways to get them engaged. I love that idea that we'll do some mixers. In aligns with that, could you kind of expand on ways you had said medical records, but could you give us a few more ideas on things or roles that a CASA could do that a case manager would benefit from, or the difference between the two roles of a CASA and a case manager, I guess.
So
Amy,
a lot of times, you know, we need school records, we need medical records, therapy records, doctor records, things like that. A lot of times it takes time to get those. Then there's getting them, and it's not to say that my case manager shouldn't read them, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to have an extra set of eyes perusing through them to say, hey, I know you might have only had 10 minutes to look at this, but I had an hour. Did you notice this? Did you see that? And checking in with that. Sometimes it can be, you know, it might be where maybe, you know, you're not doing it necessarily for us, but in conjunction with us, of helping us follow up on a hard to track down therapist that we need to know, hey, what are your treatment recommendations? How's the kid doing? Now that won't count for us for a collateral contact, but we're not worried about necessarily does it count. We're worried about who can get to the information. And that can be very helpful. Sometimes it goes back to divide and conquer. Our families, our kids have different meetings. There are some meetings that we can be in. There are some meetings we can't be in. So maybe if there are different things that you could accompany a school meeting virtually, or different types of things, those kind of things.
Shawn, I would add, I think it would be beneficial too to send court notes over to case managers,
Oh, yes.
because while they're in court, there are things they miss. They often are on the stand much more often, except in Judge Formy's. I think Judge Formy puts all our people on the stand too now, but they're often on the stand more than we are. And those of you that have been on the stand, you know how nervous you get. So I can imagine that case managers are getting nervous, and they're thinking about all the things they need to respond to. So if we can collect information and share that information to make sure they capture all that well. Also, what I think one of the things she asked is there's things a caseworker can do versus a CASA, and a case manager can issue referrals and CASAs cannot. How can we work with our case managers to make sure the referrals for services are happening quicker, and some of the meetings that are required, right, by policies? So a lot of our 14 plus meetings, or our meetings for any of the family team meetings, how can we support, because we can't call those meetings, right? We can't force those things to happen. How might
No,
we?
but you can recommend, you could definitely recommend. Sometimes we forget that we need to do that. I'm sorry, I'm trying to help a child get a placement real quick.
No, go for
There we go. So you can definitely call, you know, ask for those meetings sometimes, you know, to make sure everybody's on the same page. Those can be very challenging times. While you can't make the referral, there's no reason that you couldn't help with following up on a referral if we made it. Some of our providers are really good, you know, about responding in the first day. You know, there's a contract they're actually supposed to follow, but sometimes they don't. And being able to get it assigned. So there's nothing wrong with offering, hey, if you're having a hard time connecting with, you know, you've made that referral, how about you give me that, you know, let me follow up for you. Let me do the follow up. That's a great one, because you're right. There's a number of things you cannot initiate, but there's a ton of stuff that we usually have on our list that requires follow up, that can be labor intensive. And that might be a point of discussion of, hey, what do you need to follow up on this month that I can help you with? Is there anybody you need me to track down? Is there phone numbers? Are there resources that you need? Are there other documents and things that I can get for you? How can I help you follow up? I think that's a great conversation piece.
So Shawn, one thing we hear when we talk about that with our CASA volunteers, though, to be quite transparent with you, is that our CASA volunteers often are like, well, that is their job. Why aren't they doing it?
That's a great question. It is their job. I will tell you though, that again, with 30 to 45 cases, a lot of the work that we have to do, honestly, is we have to break down the work from what I'll call three tiers of the things that you absolutely have to do, to the things that are good to do, to the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
In this COVID environment, with the high demands that we have, the complications that it is to keep our children in placements, keeping them with the services that they need. A lot of kids need services that we're still struggling to get in person. And so we're dealing with a lot of that. We've got a lot of high-end cases with kids that are CHINS kids, and these are very labor intensive. These kids blow placements every 30 to 45 to 60 days. On average, I've got people that have been looking since this morning for a placement. This is like literally one of the major things that we've done all day.
Yeah.
So do I have 168 emails that I need to read?
Yeah.
I do.
And I would imagine with all the immense amount of funding that DFCS probably could use, your staff could get down to those things that they want to do, but the lack of funding that we invest in our child welfare system, which is something our CASA volunteers can also do, which is advocate for additional funding so that
Yes.
your staff has 20 cases instead of 40. That would make a big difference, I would imagine.
That would make a huge difference. And I think, maybe we should put together an FAQ list of things CASA can do for you. Hey,
Yeah.
that's catchy. Y'all need to do.
Yeah, there we go. What
do that.
CASA can do for you. We'll add that to our little bios that we're working on to send to different.
What can CASA do for you? And,
Yeah.
maybe blasting it and continuing to put it out into the face of our case managers that are overwhelmed. And because we have so many that really are only a year old. Most of our workforce is right at a year old. And so why can't they do it? It's their job. It is, but so are 100 other things that are their job. Right. That are competing priorities. And when you're already working 12 to 14 hours a day and working some on the weekends too, the sad and unfortunate thing is sometimes we just run short.
Right. You run out of time. Thank you. I didn't mean to really put you on the spot, but it's a common question. And
I'm glad because we just came up with the FAQ list of the things CASA can do for you. And y'all are great. You need to put your little webmaster. I love all the stuff that you guys are putting out. You see me liking stuff on your social media.
You're one next to Susan's ex-husband. You're the next biggest fan on our CASA Facebook page.
Oh, I accept the challenge to be.
Oh, look at that, Susan. You better tell Andrew to step up his game.
But I think putting stuff like that out, I think in blasting our email boxes and stuff, I think is something that we can do.
Yeah.
To constantly remind them that, look, here's of all the things that they can do.
So we only have a few more minutes and I want to ask, there's a couple more questions. What would be the best way to handle a situation where you feel like the case manager might have personal issues with a foster family? Which is it's a family member, that's the foster family, and you feel like it's holding up the adoption process. So basically maybe that we feel that there's some level of conflict of interest or that they're not being necessarily objective. What do you think the best way, and I think this could apply for anything that we feel like is not being handled maybe as professionally as we might expect, what would you think would be the way we can escalate those types of matters best?
Well, one, I think that if I'm getting your structure right, one of coordinators, get it to your coordinator, right? And
first
then get that information to your coordinator, and then a coordinator should start talking to that case manager's supervisor. Sorry, I'm seeing everybody here. Should get that to the supervisor. I'd love to see the supervisor and the coordinator to be able to have conversation, to be able to resolve the issue, and like to try to keep things at the lowest level possible. But then if the coordinator is not able to resolve it with the supervisor, then obviously I think then next step would come up to like Mandy or to you, Kate, and
Mhm.
should be brought over to me.
Mhm.
So that we can help resolve the issue. We want permanency for our children. And, some things, sometimes we get really emotionally invested.
Mhm.
And Savannah's a small town, and our case managers are often from Savannah. So it can happen that that they know people from different settings. And so, and we see that with CASAs too. There's times we've had to reassign CASAs or not assign
Yeah.
them to something because they have a relationship with the foster family or the biological family. And so so Natalie, to answer your question, that is something that does happen. And you should absolutely talk to your coordinator, just as Shawn mentioned, and we will work through that process. We have good relationships with the supervisors, and we will continue to have those. If you don't feel like your coordinator is addressing it, you absolutely should go to Mandy or come to me, and we will escalate it as need be. Sometimes I'm the person that people write to when they know they need someone to get real angry, because I just very quickly go to 0 to 60. So if you need that, Natalie, go ahead, email me. um, so we have a couple other ones here. Dawn has asked, she's a member of Compassion Christian Church. Are there, and which, Shawn, we all know Compassion's been doing a lot in partnership with DFCS. Are there other churches that are doing initiatives like that? Or is that something people could bring up to their churches?
I think it's something that there's a couple of churches that periodically step up, but no church that has been as consistent as Compassion. I would love to partner with more churches. So if there are other churches that would like to get involved and do something like a care support team, or have some other way, we tend to have more churches step up around holidays or certain events, than have a consistent uh, presence about. But certainly, we definitely, one of the things that we would love to do is either virtually or in person be able to come out and to do foster parent recruitment. Would love to slide in a pitch for CASA in the midst of it. And even connecting, I mean, some churches might not want to do something of their own. So one of the things that kind of gotten fond of doing is kind of like what I call super PACs or super alliances, is taking 2 or 3 smaller partners and putting them together with something that we already have existing. And then all of a sudden watching the synergy of that is so much more has happened, and we've done some really amazing things lately with that. So absolutely, I love that idea.
And so just to give some ideas, because we have 30 plus CASA volunteers on here that probably many are different parts of are part of different faith communities. If they were to approach their ministers or rabbis or other
Yeah.
faith leaders, what is something that they could say would help children that have experienced abuse or neglect? How could they ask their faith community to engage?
I think back to, again, care support teams. Care support teams will rally around different of our foster youth. They rally around our different foster homes, and relatives, to just be an extra supportive encouragement. Sometimes it's as simple as, they're going through a tough time and they bring over a meal for them. There might be a special need that a child has that isn't something that state funding can buy, but maybe they know that, hey, they could get this one thing. What if we could help make that easier? There's been all kinds of different creative things that the care support teams have done. I think that some of our kids, uh, they need like different people in CASAs. You guys can do this too, but somewhere appropriately you can bridge it where some of our kids could use different people in the community to help encourage them, support them, send them a birthday card, write them a letter of encouragement, just to say, hey, somebody out here cares about you and knows your name and is thinking of you. I think that there are some real creative ways that some
Yeah.
churches could do that.
I would add, I'm really looking for churches that when we need beds, we can email those churches and they will provide us beds, because none of us have the capacity to store beds, but when we need them immediately. And so any of you with faith communities that would have, I know that I've seen some in different states where they have a men's ministry that builds beds. But when we need it, because oftentimes, especially with family members, if we can place them with the family members, we have to get them beds first, or even to reunify, they need beds before we can get their placement. Dawn also offered that the team at Compassion would love to share their experiences too. So any of you that have faith communities that would like to see how Compassion Christian is supporting DFCS, you could reach out to Dawn. Most of for those of you CASAs, there is a spreadsheet that we try to keep updated about CASA volunteers. You can find each other's information, but you also can email your coordinator and they can connect. I think the last one is just, there was an anonymous attendee, whoever this may be. You asked if it would be helpful to list specific tasks we could support our caseworker. And I think that's exactly what we're saying, is we're going to put together some specific tasks that we can share with case managers. So Mandy, will you work on that and we can share that with Shawn? Shawn, there has been some changes at the leadership level within the foster care unit. And so right now there's an open position as the head of the foster care unit, correct?
Yes, there is.
So
I'm not sure when we're going to be able to replace that position, but as soon as I can, we're going to hopefully do that.
So we're going to come to you with those kinds of questions, or go to Wakanda if there are things that we could.
Wakanda is a great asset. If you're having trouble getting hold of a case manager, somebody tell Wakanda.
Okay, I like it. I like it. She has the perfect name to get things done, so I like it. All right. We only have about a couple minutes left, so anybody have any last minute questions, we can unmute you if you raise your hand, or you can put them in the Q&A. But thank you to everybody that came tonight on a Wednesday night on Inauguration Day, when there's still lots of inauguration events. My son keeps saying, it's still going on, Mom. It's just going on constantly. But thank you all for being here. Any last questions? Staff, do you have any questions? All right. Well, thank you, Shawn. We appreciate you taking time tonight.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
We really, really appreciate it. And we look forward to continuing the partnership and hopefully being in person again soon.
Yes.
And
One of these.
love to our DFCS case managers. And I will say that we did get to meet during the Christmas gift delivery 3 case managers that were phenomenal. And there was one that I had to tell staff, please don't ever, I want to steal her away from DFCS. Don't let me do it. She is so awesome. And she's a former foster youth who really
No, I forbid that one.
I know. I told her.
I absolutely forbid you.
Sharon was like the last that I can take. Shawn will cut off our relationship. I already took one of the best. But
well, you keep giving people too, Shawn. So it's like evening out somewhat.
Listen, I've gotten some volunteers, but I've not taken any coordinators yet.
No, you've not taken staff, but we do hear there's an intern you might be that's phenomenal that we're excited about. So
yes, I've heard.
So we are, but that's the great thing about the partnership, that we can establish these relationships. But I only shared that I would want to steal her because that's how good she seems that she would be. And so I'm very excited.
And I think that that's something I've got to run, but I think that that's something I even want to talk about with our new staff. Maybe, I mean, that was a beautiful thing of how our staff connected with you during that time. I know we don't have that all the time, but I think even, part of our work is having maybe some of our new staff shadow some CASAs and some stuff and get to see, what does CASA do? Yeah. How can I use them as an asset? What can CASA do for you?
Yes, I love that.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Shawn. We really appreciate you taking time tonight. And thank you to all the CASA volunteers that stuck on here for a happy hour with DFCS. And we'll see you all soon, hopefully in person. But, it is what it is for the time being. Thank you, Shawn. And thank you, everybody else.
See you later.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.